Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing.
Is that true? I don't know. That don't sound true, but is that true? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, Laura Fader's Perspective. And I'm going to cover this debate here that just occurred. And it's been interesting looking at people's reactions to the debate. You know, some people see one thing, some people see other things. And we're dealing with two different cults of personality here. But what I'm attempting to do is look at the facts and see what's right, what's wrong, what is really going to be best for this country. And I would like to know at the end of this video who you think won. So without further ado, let's get to it.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
You see, have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
That was pretty cool, her introducing herself like that.
And thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
That's a no.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
The answer is still no.
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit.
That sounds really bad, don't it? Give a tax cut to the billionaires. But when they're done with this point, I'm going to come back to that.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
This guy, man.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails.
All right. Now, this is my problem with Donald Trump. Stay on message, man. If you stay on message, you'll be all right. But he seems to have this personal thing where he wants to try and corrupt a person's view of Kamala by bringing up things that he knows she failed in. And that border is something that the administration has failed us in. And Kamala, as being part of that administration, as a matter of fact, being named border czar, really failed in. But what he doesn't understand is she don't need no help. Let her go, Manolo.
From mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country.
Now we back to
I'll
the
do
point.
it again and even better.
All right. Now, giving small businesses a tax break is good. It's a good thing. And giving a tax credit to the American people is a good thing. But the reason why there's such rampant inflation is because we dumped a bunch of money into the economy. And every time you dump a bunch of money into the economy, you devalue the money that's already there. And having people stay at home and produce no goods and get paid to work was a bad decision. We shouldn't have done that. Now, I don't know what the alternative would have been, but I do know that we were just creating money. And this same thing happened in the previous Democratic administration. Do anybody remember the GM bailout? You know what would have been good if we had let GM fail? There would have been a lot of assets sold for cheap that entrepreneurs in these same small businesses that she talked about could have taken advantage of. And who knows how much that would have stimulated the economy, because that big block that we dumped $700 billion into, we would have saved the $700 billion and then had money coming in. So the Democratic way is to have an open checkbook and try to spend your way out of it, because they know that they can ask the Federal Reserve, which is a whole nother subject, because it's really Congress's responsibility to create more money. That's the reason why I think going into the immigration and all of that stuff, yeah, that's an outlier as to why this stuff is happening, but his desire to get her, instead of stay on point. All you had to do is stay on point, stay on message, man. Let her talk. That's all she ever have to do is just talk. All right.
Get to immigration and border security during this debate.
See, they even had to tell
I
him.
would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us.
Let's talk about it.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst.
Now, I don't think anybody in their right mind would think that was true, because I remember that amongst black people, we had the lowest unemployment in decades. But she remembers it different.
Public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
What was that?
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But
I don't remember the last time I was able to cook up some aspirations and some hopes and put them on the plate. You see the parallel with the last Democratic administration? What was the tagline of his thing? Hope and change, right? We was hoping, but the change we got was not for the better. And I know people are going to say you are biased with Kamala. I really am. And it's for more than just her policies, which are not hers. She's just sat back and studied talking points. And that's where she's getting all her information from. And you can clearly tell that. But we'll go ahead on and get back into it and suss this thing out.
But I'm going to tell y'all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
I've been hearing about this.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump, will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you.
Sound like I just heard a plan, but okay.
And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people.
Yeah, I was going to discuss that earlier. I don't know if I got to it. Okay, tax breaks for small business is good. Tax breaks and tax cuts for the bottom financially is good. But here's the thing. Small businesses create jobs. And that's what you want to do. You want to create jobs so that you can make a product and generate revenue. That revenue circulates in the economy. The only reason why we got to pay taxes on it is to finance this bloated machine that we call a government, which doesn't need to be so bloated, and we don't really need to be financing it. We don't even really need to have taxes, at least not in the extreme way that we have them. But that aside, if you give a tax break to a billionaire who has more number of people that he employs, that maybe he can raise somebody's pay, that maybe he can start another factory in another area that needs a financial boost, that maybe you could bring those corporations into areas and make it lucrative enough to keep them in America and do the same thing. It makes more sense to give tax breaks to people who are really the backbone of the economy, as well as tax breaks to small businesses to start up, because business is what you want to encourage. So to say that he's just going to give tax breaks to the rich, that trickles down. You do understand rich people don't pay taxes anyway. All they have to do is not receive an income from the assets that they own. Borrow the money to live off of, and then you can't tax debt. So what is she talking? That personal person, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, is not going to be affected one way or another by taxes. You know what's going to be affected by more taxes on the big business? Well, it's not as lucrative for me to put my business here, but I can go to Thailand and do it cheaper. And that takes all those jobs, that takes all of that product from our country and puts it in another country. It's an okie doke when they start talking about stuff like that. So I want you to understand where she's coming from. And if she had a thought about this in any type of substantial way, she will understand that that's what's going on, but she hasn't. She has handlers, and these handlers wrote it, and then they grilled her on it, and they're making sure she understands the playbook. And that's what the American people are falling for right now.
I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and
What is that?
the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America.
I wonder if they're a bunch of liberals.
What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy.
Goldman Sachs makes the economy worse.
What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
There's a small point in that. There's a small point in that. I'm not going to say he's more, but he is interested in defending himself. He is interested in the little character games that he plays, similar to what he played with Rosie O'Donnell, all the name calling and all of this and all of that. But we're here to see what's factual and what's not factual.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Now, the thing that the American people need to ask themselves on that, is that true or is that false? Because if that's false, then I'm not messing with you, Donald Trump. But if it's true, then we have to ask ourselves, is it really a plan? And I doubt that she has a plan. This is not an economist that we're dealing with right here, Kamala Harris. And we'll go over a little bit more why I say that later.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years.
And I got to say, I hope y'all understand that. When he say a tariff, he means on goods coming in. That means that these countries have to pay more money to get their goods into the United States. And I know you'll say, well, they'll pass that on to the consumer. And that may be true, but the tariff is not directed and designed at the American people. We pay higher tariffs to have our goods in other countries than they do to have their goods here. So it's just an equalizing scheme. See, here's the thing. You have to negotiate with other countries and other governments from a position of strength. You can't be up there with your throat cracking, looking subservient like a certain person on this debate. You have to negotiate from a position of being calm, from a position of being able to say what you want to say, and do it from a position of strength. If we don't do that, we're going to be taken advantage of. And every time we have a Democratic administration, globally, we get taken advantage of. We have our president going and bowing to people. Listen, man, this is my president. I don't want you to bow to nobody. It should be an equal handshake, but you shouldn't be bowing. I don't care what their culture is because you're our commander in chief. If you don't negotiate from a position of power, then you will be taken advantage of. That's going to come up again, too.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration.
True that.
We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
He just lies. Worst inflation ever. It's been 23. It's 3. Whatever he thinks should be the reality is the reality that he then espouses, even though you know it's not. That doesn't
What he talks about is what Americans are feeling every single day, no matter what city in the country you're talking about.
So facts don't matter.
Inflation. Oh, they do. Inflation, let's take that one for a moment. Yeah, the year over year right now is what, 3.4, 3.5%? But the overarching move of inflation from when Joe Biden took office to now is up massively over 20%. Those prices didn't go away, Bill.
Don't say that. Don't say it's the worst
still
ever. That's a lie.
Because if you're an American under the age of 45 or 45 and younger, like I am, this is the worst inflation you've ever seen. I heard about inflation from my mom under Jimmy Carter, and Reagan had to get that under control. I've never seen anything like this. It's one of the reasons why young voters, young men in particular, are saying, you know what? At least when Donald Trump was president, I had more money in my pocket and I could get more things. Because this Joe Biden guy, he's not getting it done.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China.
Joe Biden actually sold some of our emergency petroleum reserve, the strategic petroleum reserve, sold some of it to China. You wouldn't believe that.
Is that true?
To help them improve and modernize their military.
I remember, because I'm an older gentleman, Bill Clinton doing the same thing, but okay.
Basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing.
Oh, she done hit my subject, AI and quantum computing. Right now, China is using AI to subjugate, monitor, track, trace, and control its entire population. China is using AI, which will be based on quantum computing because it's so astronomically more powerful, to use that to create a system where everybody is going to have to be tracked, traced. Everybody's going to have to buy, sell with the authority and with the currency, which is already digital, that they've created. The reason why she wants America still competing in that, because understand it was invented in America at Dartmouth, artificial intelligence as we know it. The reason why she wants America to be free and unfettered in that is because China has come up with the framework. Now we need to learn how to practically apply it on us. And we're the last frontier, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake about it. With AI, with quantum computing, because people don't really realize what that's capable of doing yet. And there's some really esoteric things that apply here. But
focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
And do you remember?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Said many times that the U.S. is doing far better than any other country when it comes to testing.
Yes.
Why does that matter? Why is this a global competition to you if every day Americans are still losing their lives and we're still seeing more cases every day?
Well, they're losing their lives everywhere in the world. And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me, ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
Sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?
I'm
that I
telling
should
you,
ask
I'm not
China?
saying it specifically to anybody. I'm saying it to anybody that would ask a nasty question
That's
like that.
not a nasty
Please go
question.
ahead.
Why does it matter?
Okay, anybody else?
We have to pay for the outcomes of the decisions of the administration that this lady is propagating, you know? And like I said, there are plenty of things wrong with the Trump situation. And, you know, y'all want to talk about the January 6th event. I watched a lot of footage from that. I tried to get to the truth on that. And I just got to tell you that the truth of the situation that I saw was that they were let in, that they were given a tour. Also, how in the world can we be prosecuted for something that's us? I do remember this thing called the Constitution that said it was the government for the people and by the people, right? Well, we're the people. So technically, everybody up there works for us. Technically, those taxes, all those taxes that they keep taking out of our checks and taxing us on every good, which is double taxation, is going to pay for that. So a man in a buffalo hat goes and kicks his foot up on your desk. It's his desk. See, we're supposed to challenge our government every now and then. We're supposed to make sure that they're honest. And you can tell the ones that are running scared because they're like roaches doing the wrong thing because they really don't ever want that to happen again because they don't want no challenge to their authority. That's our political process. I think it was Thomas Jefferson who said, hey, your government should fear the people, not the people fearing the government. The Democratic Party would like the people to fear the government. Now, yes, Donald Trump used that because he didn't believe that he actually lost that election. And that's his right to do also. So anyone that thinks that they're being taken advantage of is going to do what they got to do to make sure that they're not. But it was not insurrection because it's part of our political process. And to even take those people to court behind it, in my mind, was illegal. There was a woman who died. I think one person who died, not all of these people they kept saying that died. Some of these people died having a heart attack in relation to the event or something like that. I get all of that. But the point is, that's the price of having a free and democratic government. We must be able to challenge it. Otherwise, how is it free? Do you understand that?
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her.
And that goes directly into what I'm saying. They don't give tax breaks to big business, so big businesses go to Thailand. They go to Taiwan. See what I'm talking about?
Because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window.
We're not just saying that. When they were saying, hey, Chinese, that stuff didn't come from China. They're not implicated in anything. And as he was saying that back then when he was president and that was coming out, they were challenging that. But now they're all for it. That's evidence right there, ladies and gentlemen, who telling the truth about something and who's bending the truth just to try to sound good and get a sound bite.
She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say.
He think he getting it with this immigration thing. And it's not looking favorable for you when you do that, Donald Trump. If they ask you about immigration, talk about immigration. But until they ask you about it, stay on what she's saying, man. She's already losing. She get up there, say things that they've told her is true, and they're provable to not be true by a layman like myself.
Say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the
Yeah, we'll talk about it later, man. This is hurting you.
worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
They don't hate it. They're Marxists, like you said. They're trying to crash it. They're trying to loot it. they're trying to do all of this stuff in the very place that they're going to run, the place that they talk about their enemies with, is China.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion.
Oh, God. Why? Before she gets started on this whole subject, let me just make my views clear on that subject. Unaliving kids is a ritual sacrifice to the demon Moloch. You can look at it any way you want to look at it, but it is, since the time before time, been viewed as a sacrifice to kill children. Now, you consider it more barbaric if the child is born and then they kill it, which I guess is a point. But the end goal is the same. You take an innocent and then you delete that innocent because you place yourself above that innocent. I don't have no problem with the woman dying to bring a child into this world. I really don't. I know you do, because you're selfish. You don't know what this thing is called. That's, what is it called? Sacrifice. You don't know anything about that. We're here to live for others and make the world better than when we found it. And unfortunate things happen. You know, if you get SA'd and there's a child, I'm going to tell you, the one person in that situation that's totally innocent, it's that unborn child. It didn't have a chance to do any wrong whatsoever. And the person that was SA'd lived their life, and I'm sure they did plenty that was wrong. And the person that committed the SA, that person right there should basically be killed. I think when we find out that that happens, I think your life is forfeit when you do that. That's where you need to take your vengeance out at. How did it become we delete the one innocent party in the whole thing? Because the mother can't handle it psychologically? Set up a system to where when that happens, she don't even have to see the child. Take the child, find another family, put the child with that family if you must. We could be deleting a person that would save this whole country, this whole world. But like I said, that's my feelings on it. So she's finna get into all of it, man, because it seemed like that's very important to women nowadays, is the ability to delete their child. And I'm telling you right now, there's few roads harder to come back from than doing that, especially when you sit there and realize that it's the most selfish thing you could ever do. It really is. Don't talk to me about PDF files. Don't talk to me about serial murderers or anything like that. At least those people are sick. Those people, some of them have impulses they can't control. But just your average young lady, come on, man.
And President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then
yeah, I'm proud too, but look how she's getting hype on it.
last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights.
Yeah, those two things can exist in the world. The only thing that won't exist is you won't be able to do what you want to do. Not do the right thing versus the wrong thing, but just that you won't be able to do what you want to do.
In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion.
Y'all gonna elect that woman. I see it already. You're voting for her because she's a woman. And that's exactly the reason why you shouldn't be voting for her. You shouldn't even see gender when you're voting. And the fact that that's one of the biggest selling points for this candidate is scary.
Because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have.
Is that true? That doesn't sound true.
And you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before. He said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel wrote on Twitter, "This is horrific. Democratic Governor Ralph Northam, as a pediatrician himself, is defending born-alive abortions. Florida Senator Marco Rubio wrote on Twitter, "I never thought I would see the day America had government officials who openly support legal infanticide." Governor Northam responded to the backlash on Twitter saying, "I have devoted my life to caring for children. Any insinuation otherwise is shameful and disgusting."
Is that true? Because that doesn't sound true.
And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick.
He just has to insult people. He think that's getting him points. Every time you do that, you lower yourself a little bit.
Says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also said execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother.
I just went over that. I don't believe in that. I just seriously don't. That seems like the exact opposite of what we should be doing.
I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions.
In my opinion, 85% of Republicans is wrong.
It's very important, but we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it.
What's the difference in me enlisting into the military and going to die so that you may have rights? Why is that not considered when we're talking about this issue, man? Your primary goal should be to bring a child into this world. And if a child comes into this world through an act of evil, then we hold that person accountable. That's the one whose life should be forfeit, not the innocent. I just really don't understand how people can even think about that. Have y'all never looked at a baby, man? Have y'all never looked into their eyes? Have y'all never heard one of them cry? When a baby cries, what do you want to do? You want to see what it is you can do to stop that child from crying. You want to take away anything that may be putting it at a discomfort to make it cry. That's what you want to do. Okay, well, what they want to do is be sexually irresponsible 9 times out of 10, because we're talking about exceptions here. I'm not talking about exception. I'm talking about the norm. I'm talking about the rule. They talking about the exception. The exception doesn't prove the rule. You're sexually irresponsible, and then you're going to go and delete a child because you can't live with the consequences. With all the 31 flavors of birth control we have in this world today, still that's an option. It's evil, and it's going to send a whole lot of people to hell.
And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it.
And believe me, he going to ride on that for a while with that. Yeah, I think it's better being in the hands of the states than the hands of the federal government, because I think the federal government should be relatively small and should not operate on a large amount of funds. But yeah, going back to the states is cool, but I think, just my personal opinion, I think we should ban it across the board. And I think we should do things to make sure that we're not encouraging the kind of lifestyle where it happens as much as it does. I think we need to start with the disenfranchised first. I really do. Let's start with people who don't have the opportunities that everybody else have, and let's make sure that they understand the consequences and the outcomes of some of their actions, because a lot of times That's all poor people have to do. I mean, that's one thing that everybody can do that feels good. And sometimes you live a life that doesn't feel very good most of the time. So there is compassionate sympathy in that. But I do think that we need to educate people to understand that if that does happen to result in another human, that human has 100% right to be here.
And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby.
All right. My point is, why are you saying that? He didn't say there was a state where it was legal.
After it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
See, that's why I don't like when they put these women of color up here, man, because the agenda women of color have the most agenda against Donald Trump and feel the most kinship with Kamala Harris, who is barely a woman of color, and her heritage is not, I want to repeat that, is not African American.
Because you are Indian.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
And they did exactly as he intended.
Okay.
And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans,
Okay.
which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life.
Okay, there's a difference. Why the shift from the A word to healthcare? That's 2 different things. See? But makes it more compassionate to your point.
Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest.
I agree.
To understand what that means, a survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral.
Do you hear that? She called deleting a child, not having the ability to delete a child, immoral. It's not immoral to murder. The last time I checked, that was immoral. And thus the doublespeak of this party, the doublespeak of this candidate. It's all about you doing what you want to do. That's the point. There's no sacrifice. There's no submission to anything higher than oneself. And that is always going to lead to ruin and damnation. That's what it is. So don't let these people put you on that path, man, with this slick talk and doublespeak.
And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
There are most religions out here that do expressly that not only tell a woman what to do with her body, but tell a man what he should and should not do with his body also. And see, this is my problem. This is how you know she ain't religious. And if she religious, it's Hindu. I'm telling you right now. To live a righteous life, to live a pious life, to live a life without immorality, and that includes sexual immorality, is practiced in most religions. So what is she talking about right here? Please don't be fooled by this.
I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care.
Is that true? That don't sound true.
In an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail.
Example, please. Is that true? Because I don't think that's true.
And she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that.
This is a fictional story. Where is this happening at?
A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term?
Yes. And the one who perpetrated that should be deleted. And that child should have a chance to live. I don't care what happened. I don't care how you got here. The child has rights that supersede the mother.
They don't want that.
I know they don't. Because you want to do what you want to do. It's what you want, right? See? See the selfishness?
And I pledge to you, When Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade as President of the United States,
there will be so many more babies deleted than there are now. That's what's going to happen. That's going to be the end result of that. More child sacrifice, because that's exactly what it is. I don't see how you could see it in no other way. It's child sacrifice.
I will proudly sign it into law.
Then you serve demons.
But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban.
Fine by me.
Understand, in his Project 2025,
he just stated it wasn't his, but yet she calls it his again.
There would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Nope. Should be made by God. But you're stepping into that because you believe that you're God. You believe you have the right to choose between life and death. And you don't.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to
Well, I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50.
I sense a little dancing around the actual question. She asked you a question. Would you veto a national A-word ban? I think they deserve a straight answer on that one.
Essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated?
There we go. We ain't talking about that, man. That's why you frustrate me to no end. This is why some people say you lost. This is what they focusing on right here. You jump into stuff to try to assassinate character rather than just answering the issues and the questions being put forth. She don't need no help, bro. She doing just fine by herself.
And it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach.
Is that really necessary?
But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness,
Little dodging going on, little dodgeball going on right here. You're dodging. Just say it, man. Yes or no.
J.D. And I don't mind if he has
Little stir. I don't like that. Come on now.
a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look,
2 plates of doo-doo.
we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people.
Who talking about student loans, man? We talking about the A word.
And a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America.
I don't like her, man, but I think it's a point go for her right there on that one. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about with that. He gonna get a little bit crazy because we know who we dealing with. But on that one, I think she got him. Where is that happening at? I need some proof, Don.
And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country?
That's in vitro fertilization, right? How is that? What that got to do with the A word?
Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable.
So you're talking about a person that can barely afford to go impregnate herself and bring another mouth into the world to feed and to clothe and to, I mean, that's another expense. So if you can't afford to get on the plane to go do it, why are you doing it? See how that don't even sound right, man. That is absolutely crazy.
And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice.
If they have, that's a very sad statement right there, man.
President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on
She looks at him like, what? Me? Lie? Yep.
IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that
Why
question?
don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth.
That don't sound true. Is that true? That don't sound true. Probably after birth. What?
Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board.
It's sure important to Donald Trump because he'd have mentioned it twice and been on a tangent twice about it. So now he finally get to talk about it.
In this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the traffic. United States Congress,
What was that cut right there?
including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported.
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
Don't this thing say live? Why am I seeing cuts on a live feed? I know they have a few seconds to cut, but the only time I've seen it cut is when she's saying something that might get her in trouble. And this is what I mean by the bias, but.
And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings.
And that's no guarantee that that would have any effect whatsoever on the actual flow of it. You just got more people out there doing it. You're just expending more money. Remember what I said about the checkbook? They look at this country like an open checkbook. As long as it's with the government, they trying to spend.
But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing.
Is that true? I don't know. That don't sound true, but is that true?
A problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions.
But not from a position of strength.
Who actually addresses the problems at hand.
Just like she did before, because remember, she was appointed to oversee the border, right?
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
And it did what? Got worse. So all of a sudden now, see how it works?
But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
I thought he was the guy that wanted to build a wall. Do anybody else remember that?
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised.
You know why? Because you utterly failed at it. And it's something that he can get you on. And of course you don't want him to talk about it.
And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, because there's no Meg Thee Stallion shaking her ass so that everybody can get enticed about that. And I guess that her butt cheeks is supposed to make somebody vote. See, you don't, in other words, what you say, he don't got Cardi B. He don't got Meg Thee Stallion. He ain't got none of that. I got booty dropping and hard stopping, baby, at my rallies. Allegedly.
You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early.
Is that true? I don't know. That don't sound true.
Out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your
Hey, I like Hannibal Lecter. What do you mean?
Your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
I got to be honest. I don't think she could defeat me in a debate. So that says something about Donald Trump not being able to just manhandle this situation. He got some personal flaws that's getting in the way of him doing that.
President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving.
See? Ain't no win gonna come from you responding to a rally. That's they got you on that, man. They've looked at your personality profile and they say, listen, all we got to do is try to make him look personally bad and he'll lose the point chasing after that. They got you, Donald, on that. Stop that, man. Answer that man question.
People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go.
So
and the people.
Well, I mean, you know, she do got Meg Thee Stallion. One reason.
Well, they do go. She's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light.
Is that true? I don't know. That don't sound like it's true.
So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
You got shot in the head in one of them. I mean, that was pretty interesting.
That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. what they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country.
Did you try to kill the bill or what? We ain't forgot what the question was, man.
And look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them.
Here in Springfield, the city services, the schools, the healthcare system is groaning to the breaking point under the load. This could happen to any city in Ohio. It could happen to any city in America.
Is that true? I don't know. That don't sound true, but even if they are, why are we talking about that? Now I can see why people talking about you lost this thing, man. Because right there, whether that's true or not, why would you bring that up?
Of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they...
Man, don't tell me that barbacoa is made out of pets, because that's going to really change my dietary habits.
Go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again.
And you know what? I'm tired. I'm finna go to bed. So, you know, I'm going to go ahead on and end this right here, but I will end this on an appeal. I hear a lot of people out there talking about Kamala Harris won this debate. I don't see how she won it. I can see how you can say President Trump lost it, you know, because of some of his personality quirks. But when it comes to truth, just looking past what he said and how he said it, when it comes to truth, just looking past what she said and how she said it, just dealing on the facts that even I know about, I think that Donald Trump was telling more of the truth and there's a better outlook for the country. Now, you vote however you want to vote. That's fine. I ain't got a dog in the fight because I'm telling you right now, I believe it's two plates of doo-doo, two plates. They both stink, in my opinion. We were never given an opportunity to just vote for somebody because we don't have enough money and we don't have enough of the right pool. And some of that pool is the secret societies and things that these people are going to. Her sororities and all that stuff. We don't have all of that. So we'll never be given a chance. But you probably walk past a person on the street that will be way better for this country than either one of the two choices that we got. And that's something that I think we need to address in the future. So I'm out. Lord Fader's Perspective. Please like and subscribe.